Lytudiep. Hello everyone. What could be more wonderful? When the wedding day has both you and me. What could be better than when today you and I come home together? That's what Jame said. So Jame gave Diep a wonderful gift. That is her wedding dress. I cried when I heard this story. So how will the story go? Let's find out and congratulate them today. That morning, the small house nestled against the hillside was still wrapped in a thin, dreamy layer of mist. At the door, a gentle voice called out, "Diep, Diep, are you home?" But only the locked door responded with silence. The person waiting sighed softly and sat on the front step, letting time drift by in the cool breeze, watching the white clouds float lazily across the pale sky. A passing thought flickered. One day, she would bring James here to watch the clouds with her, to talk about dreams and quiet hopes. Yet the sun climbed higher, warm light spreading across the roof. And still, Diep had not returned. Work filled the long day, buying and selling, harvesting mung beans, carrying heavy bags, picking up little NHI. Everyone kept asking the same question. Why isn't Diep back yet? James, calm as always, smiled gently and reassured them. She's probably just busy. He cooked, washed dishes, fed the cats, played with NHI, all the little things that made the small home feel warmer. Like it had its own quiet heartbeat. Late in the evening, Diep finally came home. She was tired, sun still clinging to her hair. But her smile softened everything. They talked about the day, about unfinished projects, about the new company they were building together, still fragile like a sapling. And then James looked at her with an excitement he tried to hide but couldn't. "Are you free tomorrow? I want to take you somewhere special." Diep tilted her head, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. James only smiled, the kind of smile that carried a secret. The next morning, after dropping NHI off at school, James drove her to a place she never expected, a bridal boutique. Diep froze, surprised to the point her heart missed a beat. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered, half scolding, half trembling with emotion. James answered softly, "Because I wanted to see your reaction." She was guided to a makeup chair, then into a fitting room. And when she stepped out, the door opened slowly, revealing her in a flowing white wedding gown. The soft fabric caught the light and shimmered, making her look as though she were glowing from within. She lifted the hem slightly, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. James stood still, unable to look anywhere else. "You're beautiful, so beautiful I don't have words," he murmured, breathless. Diep smiled, shy and overwhelmed. It was the first time she had ever worn a real wedding dress, the kind meant for a woman about to step into a new life. James walked closer, his voice steady, tender. "We can't get married yet. I know. There's still so much we need to solve, our company, our future. But I couldn't wait to see you in a wedding dress." Her eyes softened, glistening as she placed her hand gently on his. "Thank you for thinking of me before everything else." Their fitting ended in quiet happiness, warm smiles, soft laughter, and a fragile but beautiful promise. Someday, when everything was ready, they would walk down the aisle for real. But that night, when James said he needed to meet a partner about the delayed construction project, Diep simply nodded. "Come home soon. We still have to talk about our wedding photos." She didn't know that those were their last peaceful words of the day. An hour later, her phone rang. The voice on the other end was trembling. "Miss James?" James had an accident. The world around her crumbled. The dress she had tried on earlier, the most beautiful gown she had ever seen, lay folded neatly on the chair, waiting for a future that suddenly felt unbearably distant. At the hospital, James lay motionless on the bed, surrounded by blinking machines. Diep rushed to him, grabbing his cold hand, tears streaming uncontrollably. "James, wake up. You promised me we'd take wedding photos. You promised you'd be there with me. You can't break this promise." Her voice cracked, fragile and trembling like a thread about to snap. Near the door, the white wedding dress hung quietly from its bag. The hospital lights reflected off it, making its softness almost painful to look at, as though it were asking, "What will become of the love you two were building?" Through the long night, Diep stayed beside him. She didn't sleep, didn't move, didn't blink for too long, afraid she might miss the moment his eyes opened. She whispered again and again, "I'm still waiting for you. You have to come back to me. We still have a promise to finish." And in that sterile room, filled with the scent of disinfectant and the steady beeping of machines. The wedding gown remained, silent, pure, and unbearably hopeful, bearing witness to a day that began with radiance and ended with heartbreak. Like a love song cut abruptly in half by fate. If you'd like, I can continue the story in any direction you choose. James wakes up, or the love faces even greater trials. Or a bittersweet ending. Just tell me which path you want.